David here. Today's episode of Flightless Bird is about a lot of things, but one of those things is Kanye West. This is very timely considering his latest string of mind-numbingly dumb, stupid, and offensive tweets, which saw him being racist, extremely anti-Semitic, and at one stage, I think he just started tweeting a load of porn. In saying that, we recorded the studio part of this episode a day before any of that happened. So I just wanted to say, if you think it's weird we don't reference the latest chaos, that's why. In a way, it doesn't really change anything because we already knew all this about Kanye West. He's kind of done it all before. But in the chaos of keeping up with everything that's going on in the world right now, some of that just felt a bit faded, like it was a million years ago, and now it's back in extreme, sharp focus. I guess I could sum up my feelings by what I just texted Rob. I wish we'd gone a little harder on Kanye, but yeah, you get the idea. On to the episode.
Hello?
Hi, Eddie. Do you want the good news or the bad news?
Oh, God. You deliver it to me whatever you think is going to have the most dramatic effect.
No, you need to choose.
Okay. Let's go good first.
I'm calling you right now with a question for the Flightless Bird podcast.
Okay. Okay, great.
Do you want the bad?
Yeah, hit me with the bad.
Hayden and Rosabelle didn't pick up.
Oh, okay. So I'm the third option.
Yeah, but a really good one. Today's episode is about someone who squatted in Kanye West's abandoned house.
Okay.
And sort of in light of that, I'm just wondering if you can sum up New Zealand's feeling towards Kanye West.
Oh, David, I'm really sorry. I don't think you're talking to the right person about this. I don't know how New Zealand feels about Kanye West. I don't think New Zealand thinks that much about Kanye West, but I'm not sure that I'm your guy on this one.
How do you feel about him?
He seems like he's kind of gone off the rails. He's got a girlfriend who walks around with not that many clothes on. There's a category of celebrities that I feel like are constantly projected into the media as being important. And I do think that New Zealand, to some extent, is just not paying that much attention to any of them. And they only exist because they exist in, like, the news. It's like, here's what Kanye's doing. And it kind of just exists as this background noise to everything. But I don't know that anyone's particularly invested in any of it.
I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. Today's episode is the final story I recorded while I was in Australia. First we had sharks, last week it was fake seizure guy, and today we turn to one of my favorite Australians, John Safran. I've known John for over a decade now. He's a documentary maker, author, and radio host, and a podcaster. England has Louis Theroux, Canada has Nathan Fielder, America has Michael Moore, and Australia has John Safran. I've always been amazed at what he puts himself through. For one particular documentary, he came to America to try and join the Ku Klux Klan, which is quite a feat considering he's very, very Jewish. Another episode of a TV show saw him getting physically nailed to a cross in Manila as part of a religious parade. He's also a deeply curious person, and while I was in Australia, I wanted to talk to him about his latest project, a book which saw him squatting in Kanye West's abandoned house here in Los Angeles. So, get ready to climb that fence and push open the back door of the mansion, because this is the Kanye Squatter episode.
Flightless, flightless. Flightless bird, touchdown in America. I'm a flightless bird, touchdown in America.
Rob, how are you?
Good.
Another chaotic week in America?
Another chaotic week in America.
Have you? I've kind of given up trying to keep up in some ways. Like I specifically put my phone in airplane mode sometimes just to disconnect from all the updates about everything.
Yeah, I've kind of not paid attention this week either. We've had a lot going on. We're about to go to Seattle. We've got stuff.
There's been stuff. Elon's running amok. He's getting stuck in there as an unelected official. Somewhat alarming, but I just can't keep up with the logic. So anyway, just wanting to acknowledge that it's pretty nutty.
Yeah.
A really big update on last week's episode, which I'll get to in the feedback section, but fake seizure guy has been arrested.
Because of our episode?
I'd like to say it was because of that, but I think it was probably not because it literally happened day of.
I mean,
we have a big reach.
Seems like proof to me, David.
Okay, it's proof. It was definitely because of us.
So the day we put the story out, he got arrested?
Yeah, which is wild. So I'll talk about that at the end. Also heard from so many listeners that have their own localized version of fake seizure guy, and that is much more wild than I ever expected.
Like, some spin-off episodes, maybe?
I think so. I think we've got the entire rest of the year outlined of where we're going to be going. But I know you said there'd be a lot in America, but I was reading these emails and it was really good. Before we get into meeting John Safran, who is one of my favorite people, a couple of other quick emails that had come in that I just thought were amusing for last week's episode. Megan wrote in about hook turns, which did trip a lot of people out. A bunch of people on our YouTube channel were saying, holy shit, Rob, like, how did you cope with David trying to explain hook turns to you? But Megan was my champion. She wrote in and said, David is right about hook turns. You do cross both directions of traffic, thus keeping the middle of the road clear for public transport. I can attest it's both confusing and terrifying.
Yeah, I think you got there. I think the problem was you forgot what side of the road you drive on in Australia, which threw off
the whole thing. Deranged. And also, Kelsey wrote in. A lot of people wrote in about Noah, who was speaking about how he enjoyed Melbourne because it was flat.
Yeah.
A lot of feedback to like why you would want to live in a flat city. Kelsey said, I came to weigh in on flatness as being a desirable trait in a city. I connected with this desire immediately, but also laughed when Rob pointed out how dumb it sounds. I grew up in the plains of North Dakota and always feel so much more at ease when I can see for miles or watch the sun the moment it rises up or goes down below the horizon. It's very comforting to me. I now live in a hilly city that beats my hometown in basically every metric. It's progressive, populist didn't vote for fascist, etc., except for the amazing topography of flatness.
That makes sense if you come from a place that's flat. It's just what...
Yeah.
It's comforting.
It's just being able to look out into the distance.
Yeah.
I had another friend in New Zealand that had this theory, and I actually forgot to bring this up, but they think if you look at the murder rates, there are way more murders in flat cities. And their theory for that, completely unsubstantiated, is that if you don't have hills like separating little bits of the city, it all becomes this big oneness and murders start happening. It sounds like woo as I say it out loud, but they had a theory about flatness being associated with high murder rates. Nothing to back that up whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay. Kanye West, we're going to talk about John Safran, who squatted in his house. Just quickly, do you have any thoughts? I mean, you love music. Do you have any thoughts on Kanye? The music and the man, which are possibly difficult to separate.
I've never been a big fan of Kanye's music. I don't have anything against his music.
Yeah, but it's not your thing.
It's not my thing. I do know he spent a lot of time in Chicago.
Okay.
So, like, it was a big thing in Chicago, Kanye.
Right.
And, like, it's always cool when someone comes out of Chicago and makes it big. Like, same with, like, Chance the Rapper.
Oh, he's Chicago as well.
He's a Chicago guy, and I don't spend time listening to him, but just the Chicago-ness.
Yeah, if talented people come out of where you grew up, you take pride in that, right?
Yeah. But then I also know he took a real left turn the last few years.
An absolutely maddening turn.
Probably mentally ill.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of mental health issues.
Yeah.
Also just saying horrific things. It's strange for me because I really, in New Zealand, I don't know if it was a New Zealand thing. I loved Kanye growing up there. I saw him perform maybe 15 years ago when he did College Dropout.
Yeah.
I loved 808s and Heartbreak. Weirdly, the other time I saw him perform, he was opening for U2, which was one of the weirdest fusions I'd ever seen. I assume it was a label going, U2 is so big, we're going to fill the stadium. Maybe we'll get some like new Kanye listeners if we have him opening. But the weirdest gig I've ever been to. Pairing. And I just remember a bunch of Kanye fans going, and then the second he finished, they all just like got up and left. Because they didn't want, like, Kanye fans don't want to watch Bono.
There was an era, though, in, like, the 2000s where that, like, crossover between rap and hip hop and like indie. Like Kanye kind of fit within that indie world.
I'd go with indie, but just not U2.
No, but I mean, I remember going to a festival in Chicago. It was the Veils, the Shins, Band of Horses, and Snoop Dogg.
I'll see. That's kind of right. I mean, that's great to have like fusion in there. I like that. It's funny, like I go to a lot of metal festivals, and in the last couple of years, they've always put Slowdive on the lineup, and that always amazes me. But you need it, like you need that like quiet and beautiful shit in amongst all the loudness.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, you need like cigaros at a metal festival.
You need exactly that. It's like I went to another metal festival and Flaming Lips played like in amongst Danzig and stuff, which was wild. And then, I did notice the Grammys that happened recently, wasn't invited, but his partner, who is Australian.
Yeah, well, so I read up on this because I figured we were going to talk about this. What I had heard was he showed up and was kicked out, but he was nominated for a Grammy, but also didn't have a seat there. So he came for the red carpet and then left.
Okay.
But yeah, she was like fully naked. She was wearing a totally see-through dress.
I guess that's what I'm confused. Yeah, no, absolutely. She was wearing a completely see-through dress. There was an amazing image going around on Instagram of a kid who looked about 8 kind of doing like a double take, and everyone was laughing. But then also people were saying, no, like that you can't, as an adult, turn up naked in front of children. Like that's you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, you can't do that.
The first article I saw was the LA's not going to be charging her with indecent exposure.
Okay, right. Interesting. I mean, I'm sure if it was a male, it would probably, they would be charged, I imagine. But then also, I don't know if there's a technicality if you're wearing technically material, like there was a barrier there, but you could see through the barrier. So I don't know if that's like a technicality. But my understanding in Los Angeles is that you can't walk around like showing your genitals. Like I thought that's a rule.
Yeah, but it is also LA, and like
it's LA.
I have seen
creatives.
I have seen plenty of
of
like
what, Rob?
Breasts in public.
Yeah, totally. I guess it was the full nudity that was
Yeah.
sort of a bit interesting. And also, I guess this idea that Kanye is always courting some sort of controversy in some way, right? And that always seems a bit, it's a lot.
Well, it's also not the first time that she's been like, I always see news articles about them wearing weird shit. And
Yeah,
going
essentially
out in
that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
They both wear, I mean, Kanye wears weird shit. Like
Yeah.
he's got his face covered in a sock or something.
Or he's wearing a garbage bag.
Yeah. For me, he's the one artist that, I mean, he said horrific shit about Jewish people.
Yep.
He essentially said Hitler's like the worst things you can imagine, he said. And that's just so frustrating when you like, I guess it's the same. It's like, it's Michael Jackson. What do you do with him?
Yeah.
What do you do with Bill Cosby's work? All this shit. It's just frustrating when this work suddenly becomes tarred by the person that made it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with all that in mind, this is John Safran, he's one of my favorite people. Probably my favorite show of his would be John Safran versus God. There's a bunch of clips on YouTube if you can't find it on a streaming service. But this is him, and I met him in Melbourne. I meet John Safran at a bar in Melbourne. Fake seizure guy is nowhere to be seen. He's wearing a plaid shirt, some big aviator-style glasses, and his hair is frizzed up like he's just had a massive fright. As he sits down, he starts quizzing me about the sound recorder I'm using.
But I've also heard on a Reddit thing that this socket on the H5 is better than the equivalent socket.
Which I then use to record that classic thing you always record with a new guest.
Hello, my name's John Safran, and I'm a writer and documentary maker.
As I mentioned in the intro to this episode, he's one of my favorite documentary makers. When he traveled to America, one of the first things he did was find out about the Mormons' magic underpants.
Are they tight shorts or are they like a...
They're really tight.
Oh, and they're shorts?
Yeah.
So the females have to wear shorts down to there and then like a top maybe?
Like a t-shirt. Like a tank top.
T-shirt like that. And then it's got the two little symbols on the nipples.
That was for a show called John Safran vs. God, a TV program that got progressively more intense as it went on.
There was an episode of John Safran versus God where I get exercised, and not Peloton bike. That's like evangelical Christian in Oklahoma beating me with a Bible. That's kind of fun, that one.
Fun is one word you could use. I'd also use intense and quite scary. Then there was his trip to the KKK.
We are a discriminatory organization. Let me make that perfectly clear. We're racist, white supremacists, and bigots.
Like, wasn't Jesus Jewish?
Jesus, if you believe the Bible, was of virgin birth. By definition, who's to say he has DNA?
Oh, the thing that Americans might like, particularly, is I tried to join the Ku Klux Klan. Yes, I got into, and it was the Orange County chapter of the Ku Klux Klan, which for some reason Americans find funny. They're going, what the hell? Why did you go to the Orange County chapter of the Ku Klux Klan and not like Mississippi or whatever? But anyway, I tried to join there, and then he shows me around, and they've got all the swastika flags and everything. And then when I'm sitting opposite him, and I do the interview, and then I just add in, I'm a bit kind of confused about who can and can't join the Klan. If you're a woman, can you join the Klan? And he says, yes. This is the Grand Dragon. And I say, oh, if you're Catholic, can you join the Klan? And he says, well, we used to not let them in, but now we do because they're just as Christian as anyone else or whatever. And then I said, what happens if you're brought up Jewish, but you don't do anything Jewish anymore? Because that's where I'm at. And then he said, what? Well, your mother's Jewish? And I said, yeah, but I don't do anything, haven't been in a synagogue since my bar mitzvah. I eat pork and stuff. And his face is turning beetroot. And his answer was, Jews are of their father, the synagogue of Satan. No, you can't join, which was a bit rough. And anyway, and then I say to him, and this didn't make him happy, I said, but I'm whiter than Hitler. I've got blonde hair and blue eyes. He has brown hair and brown eyes. If I went to school with Hitler, I'd be the one beating him up for being a quote-unquote wog. And yeah, he didn't like that.
As he made his various TV shows and documentaries, John discovered something that I've come to learn since getting stuck here in America. America is a really, really good place to make TV, films, and podcasts.
So the cool thing about America is or at least parts of it, and so now every American can go, well, he's not talking about my part. I'm on his side now. There's parts of it that are as crazy as anywhere in the world, as crazy as hanging out maybe with a little pygmy tribe in somewhere or whatever. But the thing is, they speak English. So you get the best of both worlds. You get as kooky an experience as hanging out in some Osaka, Japan subculture. But there's English, and I only understand English. And so that kind of helps. And also, Americans are they've all got a little story, and they all in a good way. In general, you could never have the Jerry Springer show or Oprah Winfrey or something in Australia because everyone would just keep their mouth shut, I don't know, whatever. Americans are always like preachers, and I love it. I love it, Americans. I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Helix. Now, if you're anything like me, you're aware that sleep is really important, but you probably don't think about it that much. You think about so much in your life, what you're eating, how much exercise you're doing, what you're doing with your day, but when it comes to sleep, we kind of just collapse and don't really think about it all that much. But the fact is, sleeping is really, really important, and that's why I'm here to talk about Helix. I got a Helix mattress probably about 3 years ago now because they were a sponsor of this show. And man, I love sleeping on my Helix mattress. I got the Midnight Lux, which suits my sleeping style. I just went online, took the quiz, got matched with a mattress, and it turned up at my door. And yeah, once you start sleeping well, you really start to notice how badly you were sleeping before. And I have Helix to thank for that because now I am sleeping really well. I wake up feeling refreshed, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to make the show. Go to helixsleep.com/bird for the President's Day sale. My listeners receive a better discount than you'll find on the website. You get 27% off site-wide plus 2 free Dream pillows with mattress purchase plus free bedding bundle. 2 Dream pillows, sheet set, and mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. That's helixsleep.com/bird for 27% off site-wide plus 2 free Dream pillows with mattress purchase plus free bedding bundle. 2 Dream pillows, sheet set, and mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. helixsleep.com/bird. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Blue Nile. Now, are you preparing to pop the big question, the really big question? Look, it's a huge moment, but what they don't tell you is how many decisions you'll have to make when choosing the perfect engagement ring. Shape, size, style, but then it gets into the setting, the cut, the color, the clarity, the carat. All of this stuff is so much to think about. And if you're like most people, you may have absolutely no idea about any of that stuff. But trust me, the other person you're about to propose to, they probably know exactly what they want. So it's time to learn and fast. And for that, there's no better place to start than BlueNile.com. At BlueNile.com, you'll create a bigger, more brilliant engagement ring than you could ever imagine, at a price you'll never find at a traditional jeweler. Since 1999, Blue Nile has been the original online jeweler. They've always been committed to ensuring that the highest ethical standards are observed when sourcing diamonds and jewelry. Plus, the surprise will stay safe because every Blue Nile order is insured and arrives in packaging that won't give away what's inside, in most cases, even delivered overnight. So if you're in a rush, that's pretty great. They also have a 100% satisfaction guarantee with free shipping and returns, so you can make sure the ring you pick is the one. And because love can last forever, you get free service and repair for life. Right now, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code FLIGHT at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code FLIGHT at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com. Before I get into his latest adventures, I wanted to briefly touch on one of John's older books, Murder in Mississippi. It was his first foray into true crime writing, and it does that thing I really love where the writing of the book sort of turns into part of the story.
Spent 6 months in Mississippi covering this murder that had happened between a young black guy in his early 20s, I think, and he'd killed this white nationalist, local white nationalist in his 60s, and he said, the white nationalist made sexual advances on me, and that's why I had to kill him. And so I went there, and the reason I went there is because, incidentally, 11 months earlier, I was filming a doco in Mississippi, and I was hanging out with that white nationalist because I was doing this thing where I surreptitiously procured a saliva sample from him, and then I took it to a DNA testing facility, and then, like a lot of people, it revealed he had some African DNA. And then I went to a meeting of his and got up, at the podium in front of his supporters and said, listen, this is a little awkward, but I procured a saliva sample from you, Richard Barrett, and And it turns out that you're part black. You have some African DNA. And then I said, listen, don't worry, it's not like you're black. It's more you're white and a bit black, like Barack Obama. And anyway, he did not like that. And he was also a lawyer. So annoyingly, he managed to get the TV station who commissioned it, ABC in Australia. The legal threats were too strong. And he was a lawyer, so he could fund himself and it just could never go to air. Anyway, so he ends up getting murdered 11 months later, or killed at least. And I'm like, this feels like I just have to go and write about this.
By now, you can probably start to understand the types of stuff John likes to tackle, bringing his own unique comedy to explore issues around religion, ethnicity, and politics. So when Kanye West started to talk about certain things, well, John was listening.
That's right. You're not Hitler. You're not a Nazi. You don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also.
Yeah, so I was minding my own business in Melbourne. So basically, he started it. It's not my fault. So I'm minding my own business in Melbourne, and then he starts going off on the Jewish people. And so he's on the Alex Jones InfoWars podcast, which, for context for that, it's like, it's like your podcast, but just, instead of New Zealand, it's American, but it's basically the same.
Absolutely similar.
And he's there, and he's wearing a black balaclava with no eye holes, and he's got a Bible in front of him, and he's telling Alex Jones, listen, everyone brings something of value to the world, which is like true or whatever. And it's like, what's wrong with that? Then he adds, especially Hitler.
Until I talked to John, I actually forgot that Kanye was so crystal clear on all this.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
And then it wasn't just this one-off. He's kind of really pitching the idea that the Jews are really bad, and he's tweeting things about how he's going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. And
I remember that tweet.
Yes. It was very confusing for me because he's such a mainstream celebrity. And so the things he was saying, I was kind of desensitized that on the fringes, there's people like that. And it was like, how's this guy... Like, he was married to Kim Kardashian. He couldn't have been more mainstream. And so why is he saying all this? And then the second thing that made it interesting to me is he's not a white American. He's a black American.
All of this was like catnip for John.
If he must have read, like, the first paragraph on Wikipedia about Hitler and said, like, he's not a fan of the Jews are bad, da-da-da. And I feel like he didn't read the second paragraph, because if he would have gone on, it would have been like, and he wasn't really a big fan of black people either. And so I was really interested about that. And then also there's this whole history of Jewish Americans and black Americans where at points they've come together in solidarity over, because they're like two minorities. But then there's also been prickly moments. And so, in a way, this Kanye West's outburst, it wasn't in a vacuum. But I am so making this sound smoother than actually what was happening in my head at the time.
In his head, it was utter chaos. But he knew he had his next book. He just didn't know what the angle would be. He was originally thinking it might focus on Kanye blaming the Jews for screwing him over in his music career. His mind spun out from there, from Michelangelo and his benefactor, the Catholic Church, all the way to Taylor Swift talking about Apple Music. Artists being taken advantage of by their benefactors for centuries, a story as old as time. But he couldn't really get enthusiastic about that particular angle, so he took another.
It ends up being about identity and the precariousness of identity, and looking at that through the most spicy history of Jewish Americans and black Americans.
Last year, John travelled to America and did a wide range of interviews, all branching out from that central question of why is Kanye West suddenly up in arms about the Jewish people? Along the way, he visited various locations central to Kanye's story, including the school he set up to educate children.
He'd set up or had set up or was going to set up, it was all a bit confusing, this school called the Donda Academy. It was named after his mother, Donda West, and it was an unaccredited private Christian school. So we find it in this foresty part of Los Angeles called Simi Valley, this matte black schoolhouse, and, we have to climb this fence, and then we get into this schoolhouse. I climbed through the window, and it was dusty and abandoned, and it was hard to make head or tail about whether, hang on, has everyone just cleared out of here? Or is everyone just about to clear in? And there were these envelopes strewn all on the floor, covered in dust, addressed to both the Donda Academy and Kanye West, and they were unpaid utility bills. Anyway, so the whole place was confusing, and then we got to this big room, and there was this sign there, cardboard placard, and it said, yay, Y-E, Kanye's name. Well, yay, where are you? We want to know where you've gone. And please ring this number. And so anyway, so I'm cutting to the chase. Yeah. I ring the number, and I end up meeting up this guy who was quite eccentric himself. He was either, I think he might have been in his late 20s or early 30s, and he was obsessed with Kanye West. And he was saying that he'd got a message in his head to quit his job and come to Los Angeles from Connecticut and find Kanye. So he'd ended up going to the same abandoned schoolhouse. And he told us that when he got there and Kanye wasn't there, he was like, well, I needed someone to stay. So he stayed there for like 20 days and 20 nights. He said like a preacher in the diner. And then Kanye's people came and kicked him out. But anyway, so that planted the seed of squatter. He'd been a squatter.
Because after all his research, he still needed somewhere to write the book that would end up being called Squat.
I went to this other mansion, and where the guy across the road, I was just asking, what's it like living across from Kanye? And he said, awful. And he said, he had these church services, because for people who are Kanye fans listening, this was where he did his Sunday services on the grounds of this huge mansion. And he says, the windows are vibrating from all the gospel singing, and then during the week whilst they're rehearsing, and then all the cars that come on the Sunday morning, I can't even back out and get to my church. But then he goes, well, it's not really a problem anymore because that was all nearly a year ago. And he said, we had security there. There were these two guys, and one drives out at night and the other drives in. And he said, but even that wrapped up about 2 weeks ago. So so clicking away in my head. And it was like, I've got to use that as my writer's retreat, because I've always wanted to work at a writer's retreat.
Going on the utility bills John had noticed at the Donda Academy, he assumed the power would be out at this property as well. So he went to a camping store and got a bunch of stuff you'd get if you were just heading out into the woods for a week.
And then it was time to make my way into the mansion, that's the legal expression, make my way in.
I mean, I'm terrified just at the whole premise.
So there was a big gate and a big fence. I kind of got there from behind and then fell into one of the back patios, the sliding door. And I was like, well, there's no chance this is open. But, I gave it a fidget anyway, and it was open. And so it was easy then you'd think, to make your way into a celebrity mansion.
Was there anything in there, or did you just completely cleared it out at that point?
So there were things that were confusing, but then you found out, it's art. It's like installation art, or like for instance, the whole of the mansion was painted blue on the inside, the ceiling, the walls, and the floors. But that was art, And the whole mansion, at one point, there was this tight white plastic surrounding it all on scaffolding. By the time I got in, it's all kind of been weathered and has collapsed and is flapping in the rain and the wind. But that also, I think, was art.
So just the weirdest place to stay.
Yeah. There was also a 2-story house next to the mansion. And so I got to sleep in Kanye's bed. And
comfy?
Yeah, it was comfy. No complaints. Like a big industrial kitchen, and I'd brought my own food because it'd be pretty obnoxious for me to kind of assume I can eat his food or whatever. But then one night I did have his pasta, some of Kanye's pasta.
At this point, John was glad he'd purchased a shovel at the camping store because Kanye's toilets were not flushing. How did you use the bathroom?
Had to dig a hole.
Of course, while he was squatting in the house and shitting in Kanye's backyard, John was increasingly paranoid he'd get caught, arrested and deported back to Australia before the book was done. But no one came, and John lived and wrote in peace.
One of the legal things looked into was the son of Sam law, where it was a serial killer who was called the son of Sam. Was he allowed to profit from a book? But anyway, they looked into that, the lawyers, and said, nah, this is different. John, what you've done is different to the serial killer. so you don't have to worry about that.
The book is now out safely in the world, and Kanye's yet to sue. I imagine he's busy planning his next musical collab or a new line of shoes. As he mentioned earlier, the book focuses on the history of Jewish Americans and Black Americans, and on the precarious nature of identity. And of course, it muses on what happened to Kanye, on what made him say all those terrible things on Alex Jones's terrible show.
He really tipped over deep into Christianity, all of a sudden, it was one of those born-agains, right? And if you start reading the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament, you have these conflicting things that are thrown at you about Jewish people. So one is that they're the chosen. So that's all got a lot of electricity about it because it's like, is that a good thing? Like, it's a good thing they're the chosen. That's good. Or is it like, does that make you a bit sort of annoyed because it's like, oh, so they think they're better than us or whatever. So there's this whole like weirdness with that. But let's stick with the positive of that. So you learn that the Jews are special and they're the chosen. But then you also learn that Jews killed Jesus. And, you know, and I know that Christians will be listening and going, oh no, but there's a positive into. I agree with you, man. I'm not trying to throw shade on Christians. And I know in other texts and Jewish texts and Muslim texts, there's all this spicy stuff too. So I'm not trying to pick on Christians or anything, but it's pretty easy to interpret it as like Jews killed Christ, their Messiah, and also their blood is on the hands of all Jews for future generations. So imagine if you just fall in suddenly into a religion and you're told those things about Jews. It's pretty easy for it to go a bit haywire.
A bit haywire is certainly one way to put it. The book he wrote is really great. It's called Squat, and I think it's fair to say it's way more interesting than what your typical author would have done with this particular subject.
Chasing a celebrity is a bit of a straight line, while squatting at a celebrity's mansion, it just felt to me like even my worst enemy would kind of have to acknowledge, oh, yeah, nah, it's a pretty cool idea.
Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Aura Frames. Now, if you're anything like me, you have about 10,000 photos on your camera roll. Some of them are great, some of them are terrible, but chances are you're never going to look at them again. And hundreds of photos are just sitting there wasting away on your phone, wasting away in the cloud. And I say, why don't you start putting them to good use with a unique, stylish digital picture frame from Aura Frames? It was named the #1 digital picture frame by Wirecutter, and for good reason. It's so easy to set up, and they have different frame options, so you can pick the one that looks good in your house or in the house of the person that you're gifting it to. I've talked about this before, but my parents have an Aura frame in the lounge. And I probably once a week go through, select some photos I think they like, and I'll send it directly to their frame because that's how I've set it up. And that's how they communicate with me. They don't go on Facebook. Facebook's rubbish. But through the Aura frame, they can see what I'm up to. The best part is that it comes with unlimited storage. All you need is the free Aura app and a Wi-Fi connection. And you can upload as many photos and videos as you want year-round. And right now, you can save on the perfect gift that keeps on giving by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners can get $20 off their best-selling Carver matte frame with code BIRD. That's AURA frames.com, promo code BIRD. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. I really like that he took a shit in Kanye's backyard.
He dug a hole and
dug a little hole. Very civilized. Love he slept in Kanye's bed.
Civilized?
I think like if he didn't dig a hole, uncivilized would be shitting in Kanye's toilet and leaving.
Or like bathtub.
Yeah, leaving in there. He dug a hole. Like that's what you do when you go camping, right? Is that what you do when you go camping?
I have never
or you mean to take your shit with you at the end? I can't remember.
I think
it depends
it's either.
Where you are.
I had a friend who went camping and with a friend.
Okay, I'm worried about this story.
And he shit in a bag. Because you're not supposed. I guess you're not supposed. Or I think the ground was maybe frozen or something.
Yeah, in some cases you're not meant to leave like your human waste there.
But he put it in the garbage bag that then my friend had to drive back home with and didn't realize that there was human shit in that. So about halfway through the drive back to LA, he realized his car was smelling like human shit.
I hate that.
And realized what had happened.
I really don't like that at all. It reminds me of a thing that happened to my friend where she was on a date. This is like years ago. She was on a date. She'd stayed over at this guy's house. It was going really well. She used the toilet in the morning, and her I'm trying to use a civilized word. Her shit wouldn't flush.
Yeah.
It's too big. So she panicked because she's like, she likes it. She can't just leave this like big shit in there. She went to the kitchen and she got
Tupperware?
a bread bag.
Oh, bread bag. Okay.
And got that in there and got the shit out, tied it up, and basically fled. So left the house. Was going to see him again, but just didn't. She had the shit.
Never
in her
saw
hand.
him again?
Oh, well, she did. But what happened is she basically put that on the passenger seat next to her, the shit, as she drove home. And she crashed. She was in a car crash on the way home. And the paramedics came, and it was her in the car. Almost said her name. She wouldn't be happy. And the bag of shit, like, splashed over the front dash. Anyway,
yikes.
It was good. It's dangerous traveling around with human shit.
Yeah, I guess she should have buried it somewhere.
She should have buried it like John did.
Yeah.
Also, talking about squatting, it just reminded me of a thing I read in Vanity Fair the other day. Beware the serial squatter of Malibu's Point Dume. Have you heard about this person?
I do know California, though, has like pretty crazy laws about squatting, and it's really easy to just squat.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like now I think about this, I feel like squatting we should look at some point in the future because it seems loose because this particular person just didn't squat in one house. She infiltrated a number of houses and just has been haunting Malibu for years, which is incredible.
Well, and I heard it's like really hard to kick a squatter out.
Once they're in, like the laws protect them.
Yeah.
Because of course, as a renter, you want to be protected. You don't want a landlord just like turfing you out.
Yeah.
But it seems like in California, the law has gone too far in another way.
I don't know the details of it. I'm sure there are reasons for it.
It sounds
for
like
renter
she's found a
rights,
hack.
But yeah. It sounds like people have taken advantage of it. There's a house down the street from us on the corner that a bunch of squatters had gotten in there and had been living there for like a while, and I think they were struggling. The like Department of Energy had to come and kick them out because they own the house for some reason now.
Okay,
they took over.
Did they get them out eventually?
I think so. I think because they boarded it up again.
Yeah, right.
And
because in my mind, when I think of squatting, it's like naughty kids for like a couple of nights or something.
Yeah, like the OC.
Like the OC, exactly. But like this seems like a whole other thing. I was curious with John, like if he was worried legally, but he checked with the lawyers, and the lawyers basically gave him a list saying, as long as you don't do these things, you're technically fine. But I'd still be, I would be terrified sleeping in Kanye's bed.
Yeah.
Like every night, I'll be like, is this when I get arrested? But yeah, it's a really good book. I recommend it, and I recommend all of John's shows. His episode in John Safran versus God, where he physically gets crucified. So you see the nails go through his palms.
Wow.
And it's one of the roughest things I've ever seen. Another episode, he I'm very skeptical, but he essentially gets an exorcism, and it's so intense on screen. It's one of those TV moments that I'm so puzzled whether he was acting or it was scripted or whether it was reality.
Have you seen the Nathan Fielder exorcism one?
No, I haven't caught, and I love Nathan. I haven't seen that.
It's a Nathan for You where he brings in an exorcist and then...
I mean, we had one in Dark Tourist. Like, exorcists are the best. Like, it's wild. And I've seen someone else getting an exorcism, and you're watching it, and it seems like very visceral.
Yeah, it's
and
very
they
like primal.
think they're going through something.
Yeah.
It's freaky. That's my analysis. It's freaky. Okay. Feedback. Some really fun feedback, actually, to Fake Seizure Guy. But just quickly, more shark feedback. Melinda wrote in, I'm an Australian listener who tunes into your show every week. Since your visit to Australia, there have unfortunately been several shark-related incidents I wanted to share with you. Just yesterday, we learned of a third fatal attack, which occurred only 100 meters from the shore at a popular tourist beach in Queensland. These 3 incidents have all happened within the last 5 weeks. Growing up in Australia, many of us are told that the odds of a shark attack are lower than the chance of being struck by lightning. However, the events of the last few years suggest that may no longer feel entirely accurate. So yeah, sharks in Australia, not going away.
Well, I wonder too, like the odds of getting attacked by a shark in LA or struck by lightning is probably higher because we don't have lightning here.
There's
Almost
zero
ever.
lightning.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
a good point. I've never seen lightning.
yeah, I've seen it like 2 or 3 times since living out here.
We had a politician in New Zealand, and I wish I knew more about this. It was revealed very casually in a comment that she'd made that she'd been struck by lightning 3 times in her life, which is remarkable. Like the unluckiest woman alive. I wish I had more to tell you about this. That's the only thing I have in my brain about that.
It's not Jacinda, right?
It's not Jacinda. No.
Okay.
Okay. Fake seizure guy that we talked about in last week's episode. He has been. Well, look, this is the interesting thing. Fake seizure guy doesn't have a name, right? We established in last week's episode that it's probably the same guy. There's a chance that there are 10 fake seizure guys in Melbourne.
Seizure
we don't know, and that's what makes this whole thing quite strange. So the official word is that a man has been charged with sexual assault by compelling sexual touching and public nuisance in Melbourne, Australia. I've been in touch with the victim that was involved with that complaint, and the emo sounded exactly like what was in the episode. A man fell over, convulsing on the ground, made him sit on him and restrain him. So,
and he was a listener of the podcast.
He was a listener of the podcast,
which
is wild. But not he was, but not this episode. He hadn't listened to this yet, which is so. I think he'd read Webworm where I'd written about this in the past.
Yeah.
It's a small world. So he's been released on bail and will appear in court on April 24th. So I will stay across whatever's happening. But it is the craziest timing that happened the day we released.
Coincidence?
It's wild.
So you're going to go to Australia on
back.
April 24th.
Yeah, I'm going back.
For the trial.
Yeah. Going to dip into those funds from Flightless Spirit.
Guy 2 episode.
This is what the podcast is now. T wrote in and said, I'm a disability advocate and just finished the Fake Seizure Guy episode. You should link to the CDC guidelines for helping someone who's actually having a seizure. And I thought that would actually be a handy thing to do, because if someone's having a seizure, you shouldn't sit on them and restrain them.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't do that.
And I realized I didn't really know what to do. So remove anything near them that can cause an injury. Check to see if they've got a medical bracelet on that can call emergency services, or has any information about that condition. If the person is lying down, turn them gently on their side with their mouth pointing to the ground. This will keep their airway clear. Time the seizure to track if it lasts more than 5 minutes. If it does, seek immediate medical attention or call 911 or whatever your emergency number is in your country. Once the seizure's over, help them sit in a safe place to recover. Once they're alert, comfort them and explain what happened. And that's the other thing people pointed out, that if people are having a seizure, they are not going to be able to talk and instruct you to hold them down. Another clue that Fake Seizure Guy isn't having a seizure.
Yep.
Okay. Other trippy characters from around America.
Let's get into it.
Paige wrote in, there's a local legend in Chicago. Thought we could start there.
Yep.
Called Pigeon Man. Do you know Pigeon Man?
Pigeon Man?
Pigeon Man.
Is it similar to the pigeon lady from Home Alone?
That's what I'm wondering. I haven't actually read this email all the way through.
Oh, good. Pigeon Man. I don't think I know Pigeon Man.
I went to school in the area, and so a lot of my friends and family had interactions with a man who'd sit on a fire hydrant at an intersection on 2 main busy streets with hundreds of pigeons on and around him at all times. He never seemed to move from the corner or his birds. I was in college when I heard he had passed away. Ironically, he got hit by a car at a different intersection, and I learned he legally lived in the house directly across the street from mine.
Wow.
Matt wrote in from Fargo, North Dakota. My brother had an interaction with a guy around 2009 that was dubbed the Piggyback Bandit. I've included a link below. So I clicked the link. There are a number of articles about this guy, but essentially his name was Sherwin, and he was banned from 5 different states for jumping on the backs of high school athletes. So he'd go to football games.
He was a grown man?
Grown man.
Okay.
He'd go to football games, and he would approach football players casually, maybe I want an autograph. And then when their backs were turned, he would leap and he would strike. a quote from a detective in the story that I was reading on grantland.com. I'll never forget watching him get off that kid's back and the look on his face. He could have been masturbating. Honestly, the look on his face. So there's a great quote from a cop. Emily.
Yep.
I thought I'd write in on one of Calgary's own city mysteries.
A Canadian. You know, this is a Canadian place,
Oh, yes,
right?
she says this. I didn't know until I read on. A city in Canada. There was a stretch of road where there'd be a bunch of empty Vaseline containers littered and no one knew where they came from. City officials would clean them every few days and then there'd be more a few days later. It's been dubbed Vaseline Alley. I really like that. So that's in Calgary. Tampa, Florida. We had
Here we
one
go.
from Florida.
Florida, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of these in Florida.
There's a guy here called Yabor the Shoe Licker. He'll come up to you and tell you how much he likes your shoes, and then he'll ask to take a closer look. Then lift your foot and lick the bottom of the shoe, turn around, and leave. She says it really catches you off guard, which makes me think that it happened to her.
Yeah.
Cara wrote in from Ireland, and we have one of these in New Zealand, a phantom shitter. There's just shits all around town, basically.
This is a through line for this episode.
There is, shitting is a very human behavior, and it is rearing its shitty head. Boston has the one-arm push-up man. His hustle was to challenge people on the street to see if they could do more one-armed push-ups than him, and he'd always win. Emily in Oregon, three-hat man. Look, can you guess?
He wore three hats?
Wore three hats. That's it.
I love that they all have names that just describe what they're doing. They're not clever. Most of the time, they're not clever names.
I don't need to read these emails, really. I just need to say the city and their name.
City and the name of the person. Usually, I think they're all guys, too.
Often they are. And I think that's I feel like men are more emboldened to do shit, maybe. Spencer, the glove guy of Halifax. If you haven't heard of this guy, you need to look into it. Apparently, he offers people rides, then has a ruse of selling gloves, and he gets people to try them on, and he gets his rocks off while they try them on. And I did some Googling, and apparently he gets out smaller and smaller gloves, and his thing is watching the struggle of like trying to get your fingers in the different, which I kind of understand. That's kind of hot.
I mean, yeah, it's like, it's weirdly erotic.
Yeah, I think
but
I found my
also,
thing. You know, just someone forcing their finger in or something into the glove hole.
It shouldn't be, and the fact that you're making strangers do it.
I think I've just found my thing.
Apparently.
All right. Duluth. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Duluth in Minnesota.
Yep, that's Duluth.
The ball slasher.
The ball slasher?
Which sounds worse than it is. He gets exercise balls and slashes them all around town. That's all. That's his thing. Okay.
He buys and then slashes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's his thing. I really like this one. There's so many. These are whittled down.
Yeah. These are the highlights.
These are the highlights. Dustin, the spontaneous combustion guy. I'm really struggling with these names. Scappoose. 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 OR. Is that Orlando?
Oregon.
OR. What is that?
Oregon.
Okay. Oregon. Okay. About 25 years ago, I worked in our auto parts store, and SCG walks in, aka spontaneous combustion guy. He shuffles in with a trench coat and boots. He goes to the back counter and requests a windshield washer pump. My coworker informs me that it isn't designed for continuous use. He shuffles out, leaving a pool of water wherever he walks. My coworker tells me this guy thinks he will spontaneously combust at any moment and is constantly pouring water over himself. He was in our store looking to adapt a car part so you could continuously do this automatically. I just really like that. So he never burst into flame, but that was his fear. And so he just walked around leaving puddles of water behind him. You don't seem that impressed with that one.
I mean,
I like the idea of a guy that's just always having to like dampen himself down.
I mean, I more feel bad for all of these people.
Oh, no, I agree. Like it's like there's I mean, that's the thing. There's so much mental health stuff going on
Yeah.
here. So I don't mean to be sitting here giggling. It's just more the naming conventions.
No, the
that
naming
get me.
convention and the like lore from these towns.
Yeah,
And
it's-
just like how weirdly specific it is to every town.
So specific.
Yeah.
Temecula. Am I saying that right?
Temecula, that's right. Yeah.
Where's that?
That's near here.
Near here. Pubes McGee. How can I not laugh at that? He's a middle-aged man that walks around town in an open button shirt and a button-up shirt, bare chest out, and booty shorts with his pubes sticking out. That's it. Pubes McGee. This is very pure. Milwaukee has Milverine.
That's
as in-
Wisconsin.
Okay, so Milverine is in Milwaukee and Wolverine. He's a construction worker who always walks around town, always shirtless, resembles Hugh Jackman. That's it. He's got his own Wikipedia page.
There's a garbage man that they love at the coffee shop.
Oh, I know. No.
Hot garbage guy, they call him.
I didn't even knew this.
Yeah,
no, my
they
friend.
told me about it the other day.
He's amazing.
He comes out in like short shorts to get the garbage.
This guy looks, and so my friend sends me photos of him. He might be a different guy. He's like young, maybe it's very tanned, lithe, beautiful body. He's amazing. He's like the hottest guy I've seen, and he is just dumping rubbish all day. It's extraordinary.
They're in love with him at Mara.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh no, I've got photos of him.
Yeah.
Hot rubbish truck guy.
I was there one day and talking to them, and they like stopped to go take pictures of him.
And this guy knows it. He
he's got
looks. I mean, he's flaunting it. Not to say that other rubbish truck drivers aren't like this, but he holds himself in a certain way.
And he's also younger than you would expect a garbage man to be.
Yeah.
And
he's an episode.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
could do a
God,
ride
these
along
are all episodes
with him.
Bushman, San Francisco. He would create a bush to hide behind in the Fisherman's Wharf area and then jump out and scare tourists. He's got a Wikipedia page. Apparently, there were possibly two Bushmen, two men doing the same gag.
Copycat. They're all of these potential copycats. David, I think maybe whichever one you do an episode on, you go and copycat them. Depending on what it is.
Pubes guy?
Yeah.
How do we feel about that? Okay, last two. Sienna in Edmonton, Canada. Again, we have a shirtless guitar playing rollerblade guy. He was probably the most boring out of all of them. Okay, and I want to go back again to end in Australia. Hannah wrote in. And she had a theory on why fake seizure guy has been doing this for so long without any consequences. She basically said there's so much weird behavior in Melbourne that somehow no one has the capacity or the ability to change, which might be a very simple reason. And then she said something that left me speechless. Did you hear about Meat Lady? To which I thought internally, no, I haven't heard about her. I certainly didn't see her while I was in Melbourne. I've only recently become aware of her, but it's been going on for years. She waits until the local butcher shops and restaurants put their rubbish out in their big skips. Then she rummages around for raw meat offcuts and scatters the meat in different locations around town. She usually chooses this is intense. She usually chooses playgrounds and other communal spaces, but sometimes dumps it on the side of the road. Apparently, the council has spent thousands of dollars cleaning up after her, and she goes a bit intense when the police try to talk to her about it. Again, it's behavior that I guess isn't technically criminal, but it ruins the day of everyone who takes their kids to the local playground and discovers rotting animal guts on the slide.
Yeah, I mean, that sums up.
Yeah. The episode.
Yep.
So yeah, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of like colorful characters. The thing that resonated with all of these is that the community is kind of behind them, even if they are a bit sort of unsightly or a bit, like no one wants to be looking at pubes all day long, but they're kind of lovable in a way.
As long as they're harmless, I
That's
think
the thing.
it's character to the city.
It's character. And like whether meat on a slide, that's probably leaning into more not great territory.
Yeah.
A guy giving you a fright San
From a
Francisco
bush.
Wharf, that's probably fine.
Yeah. We did in Chicago, by one of our apartments, there was a water stain under one of the like overpasses that people thought looked like the Virgin Mary. And they had built a shrine for her.
Oh, that's kind of amazing.
And like always had candles and people.
Do you think it did look like the Virgin Mary, the stain?
I mean, kind of, not really.
Sort of arms and or more the face, isn't it?
It was like the hood,
veil.
The veil, yeah.
Yeah, the hood. Her famous hood. It's really good.
But people would like leave stuff for it.
I also had a thought reading all of this just now that people, including you, will often send me photos of me walking around.
Yep.
Because I wear like short shorts and often like I'm walking quite intensely and I look quite angry when I walk.
You kind of stomp.
I stomp?
You're kind of a stomper when you walk.
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm a guy. What am I? Like, what guy am I? Like short shorts man, like stompy man.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's probably got to do something with your hair at this point.
The hair as well.
Yeah.
You sent me that photo the other day. You saw.
Well, I thought it was you at first.
Yeah, and who was it? How would you actually describe them when you saw them?
I think it was like a 70-year-old woman. She was shorter than you. That's how I knew it wasn't. But Calvin's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, because she had from behind. I looked at that photo and I thought it was me.
Yeah, I do like. It's. I don't know how nice it is.
It's a go. Proceed. We're in a safe space.
Yeah. Seeing random people in public that remind me of other people.
Oh.
And taking a photo.
Oh, no, it's my favorite thing to do. No, lovingly.
I try not to do it if it's an unflattering thing. But
didn't stop you with me.
I mean, there was nothing wrong with that lady.
No, I was into it.
She was a fit.
She was
70-year-old
She had a beautiful dog
with nice hair. I mean, her hair was.
Hair was beautiful. Hair was beautiful,
Nice
and
hair.
she had a beautiful dog.
Yeah.
I wish I had that dog.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we leave it there?
Yeah, let's leave it there.
See you next week.
See you next week.